Living in Sunnyside Estates wasn't exactly my first pick, but the location worked perfectly for my commute, and the walking trails were ideal for Maverick, my service dog. Maverick is a golden retriever who helps me manage my PTSD after serving overseas. He's trained impeccably, always wearing his service vest when we're out and following commands without hesitation. I'm well versed in the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's essential when you rely on a service animal, but I never imagined I'd have to quote federal law to my HOA president. When I first met Karen Whitfield, she was holding a clipboard and wearing a scowl that seemed permanently etched on her face. She introduced herself as the HOA president, her tone implying I should be impressed. "I don't believe I approved a dog in this community," she said, eyeing Maverick, who was sitting quietly next to me. I politely explained that Maverick was a service dog, not a pet, and therefore exempt from pet restrictions under federal law. She huffed, muttered something about people always finding loopholes, and walked off. I should have seen the red flags right then. In the weeks that followed, I received 3 separate notices about supposed violations. My grass being a quarter-inch too tall, my mailbox being the wrong shade of black, and my garbage can being visible from the street for 45 minutes after collection. Each notice was signed with Karen's signature, complete with a smiley face, a smile that was far from friendly. I complied with everything, not wanting to stir up trouble, but I had a feeling these petty infractions were just the beginning. Then came the HOA meeting. Karen proposed a new rule requiring all animals, including service animals, to be registered with the board and wear HOA-approved identification. When I raised my hand and pointed out that this conflicted with the Americans with Disabilities Act, she cut me off, saying that federal laws don't trump community standards. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. After the meeting, Karen approached me and whispered, "If you want to be difficult, I can be difficult too." Her breath smelled like coffee and intimidation. The following weekend, I was enjoying a peaceful morning on my front porch with Maverick at my feet when a shadow fell across my lawn. Karen stood there in her usual khaki shorts and polo shirt, holding a spray bottle. "Your dog is violating the new pet ordinance by not having proper HOA identification," she said loudly enough for my neighbors to hear. I calmly reminded her that Maverick was a service dog, protected by federal law, and that the HOA couldn't legally require special identification. Plus, I added, the rule hadn't even been officially implemented yet. Her face turned beet red. "I'm tired of you military types thinking you're above the rules," she spat, advancing toward my yard. "If you won't comply, I'll handle this myself." Before I could react, she aimed her spray bottle at Maverick and sprayed him directly in the face with some kind of liquid. Maverick yelped, backing away, pawing at his eyes. I immediately jumped up, put myself between them, and demanded to know what was in the bottle. "Just a little vinegar and water solution," Karen smirked. "It won't hurt him, but maybe now he'll learn to respect authority." I was furious, but years of military training had taught me to stay calm under pressure. I took Maverick inside, rinsed his eyes thoroughly, and made sure he was okay. The vinegar solution had irritated his eyes, but thankfully there was no lasting damage. Once I was sure Maverick was comfortable, I called the police. "What's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. I reported the assault on my service dog, emphasizing that interfering with a service animal is a federal offense. The dispatcher took my information and said officers would be dispatched immediately. About 20 minutes later, 2 police officers arrived at my door. I explained the situation, showed them Maverick's service dog certification and training documentation, and pointed out Karen's house across the street. One officer stayed with me to take my statement while the other spoke with Karen. From my window, I could see her gesturing wildly, her face contorted with anger. The officer seemed unimpressed by her theatrics. When both officers returned, they informed me that Karen had admitted to spraying Maverick but claimed she was just enforcing community standards. They explained that interfering with a service animal is a federal offense under the Americans with Disabilities Act, punishable by significant fines and possible jail time. Additionally, her actions constituted animal cruelty under state law. They placed her under arrest and asked if I would press charges. Without hesitation, I said yes. Karen was escorted to the police car in handcuffs, screaming that she'd have me evicted and that the whole neighborhood would turn against me. A few neighbors had gathered to watch, and I overheard one whisper, "She's finally gone too far." Another neighbor approached me afterward and apologized for not speaking up at the meeting. "We've all been intimidated by her for too long," she admitted, glancing at Maverick, who had fully recovered and was back to his calm, attentive self. The legal process moved swiftly. Karen was charged with interference with a service animal, animal cruelty, and harassment. At her first court appearance, she showed up in designer clothes with an expensive lawyer who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the evidence stacked up against her. The judge was stern when reviewing the case, stating that community rules can never supersede federal law, especially concerning disability accommodations. While awaiting trial, an emergency HOA meeting was called. I attended with Maverick, and to my surprise, nearly every homeowner in the community showed up. The vice president of the board called for a vote of no confidence in Karen, citing her reckless actions that had exposed the community to legal liability. The vote was unanimous, and Karen was removed from the board immediately. Someone even printed new name tags for the board members, and Karen's name was conspicuously absent. The criminal case concluded with Karen pleading guilty to a reduced charge to avoid a longer jail sentence. The judge sentenced her to 30 days in county jail, a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service at an animal shelter, and mandatory education on disability rights. As the sentence was read, Karen's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally, the dawning realization of the consequences of her actions. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she protested weakly as the bailiff approached. The judge leaned forward and replied, "The most important rule, Miss Whitfield, is to respect the law of the land, which protects service animals and those who rely on them." As Karen was led away, our eyes met across the courtroom. The entitlement and superiority that had once defined her expression were gone, replaced by the humbled look of someone who had finally encountered a rule she couldn't bend or break. She mouthed something that might have been, "This isn't over," but we both knew it was. Maverick sat beside me, calm and attentive, the epitome of a professional service dog. I reached down to scratch behind his ears, and he leaned into my hand, a small gesture of partnership that had weathered an unexpected storm and come out stronger on the other side.